Message, living God-centered lives. So I'm going to continue that thought this morning. Every 4th of July, we do fireworks. We set up, and over the last 10 years, Dan and Amy McFarland have been very generous in letting us use their trailer to store the fireworks, and we pull it up right alongside the booth, and it makes it very handy, very nice. But one of the things that happens when they're pulling it in and setting it up, at some point, there's this little square thing in their trailer that has some fluid in it with a circle in the middle and an air bubble. And what we're gauging is to make sure that the trailer is balanced. And if the air bubble is in the middle of that circle, then the trailer is level. But if it's outside of that circle, then there's a problem. The trailer's not level, it leans to one side or the other, and so the adjustments have to be made to get the trailer centered and level so that everything works properly. Well, our lives are a lot like that. That different circumstances, situations can pull us in different directions. Sometimes work can be really busy and hectic, and so you're just exerting a lot of energy and effort into your job. Sometimes your children have extracurricular activities that begin to pull us in one direction, and it kind of gets us out of balance. It gets us off center, that for a period of time that we're out of balance. That circumstances, situations are pulling us in a certain direction. Well, if you stay there too long, there begins to be wear and tear. Every so often that you need to take your car in and get in alignment to make sure that the car stays in alignment. The tires are all aligned. What happens if you don't? It causes unnecessary wear on the car that eventually could lead to damage. And so there needs to be a period of alignment and getting it back and adjusted and balanced so that it runs smoothly. What's the same way with our lives? That if we stay out of balance, if something is pulling us too far in one direction for too long of a time, then it begins to get wear. Look, if you're putting in 60, 70 hours of work every week, week after week after week after week, there's going to be problems eventually. That your body is going to begin to break down, and there's going to be problems. So you need to bring it back into balance, okay? So being God-centered is to make sure that we're keeping God at the center of our lives, because different things will pull us off, and we'll get distracted, we'll get busy. The routines of life, the hecticness of life will sometimes pull us off center, get the bubble outside of the circle, and it begins to create problems. So being God-centered is about stopping and getting our lives back centered on Him. Billy this morning talked about having our personal altar time. Altars are places where you come and meet with God, wherever that is, wherever that time is. It could be in your car. It could be some of you with small kids. You may need to go and lock yourself in the bathroom and have your own personal altar time and quiet there because it gives you a moment. But wherever it is, it could be in your recliner, your easy chair, your couch, on your knees, in your bedroom, wherever it is, we should have that personal altar time where we're coming to God and doing what? We're getting centered again. We're getting back in focus. And if we are not having those personal altar times, if we're not having that time, it's real easy to get off center. It's real easy to get out of balance. It's real easy all of a sudden to go time after day after day after day after day and not getting God focused, not getting God centered, where that He is the focus. And so we need to have family altars. She also mentioned we need to have personal altars. We need to have family altars. What is that? That is a time where you gather the family back together and you say, guys, look, we're living hectic lives. We're being pulled in different directions, but we want to make sure as a family that we're staying focused and centered in God. And so you take some moments, you take some time. It could be at the dinner table, it could be after dinner, it could be before they go to bed, where you say, guys, you come and you pray together. Maybe you read a scripture together. But you establish that God is the center of your family. that it's important, then as a church, that we need to have those times. Sunday night is a time where we come together as a church for prayer. We have prayer during services. But again, part of the purpose of us gathering together here this morning is to make sure and be reminded to get the bubble back in the center. To make sure that we're balanced, that we're focused, that we're staying on track with God's purposes and God's ways. Last week I talked about David. Before I go there, let me just say, we just got through singing a song in our worship set that says, "My heart will sing no other name." My heart will sing no other name. Running into your arms, the riches of your love will always be enough. You know, it's a great song to sing. But practically, do we really live there? Do we really live there? Does your heart sing no other name but Jesus? Look, when life is poking at you, when life is pushing on you, when things are hectic, when things are out of sorts, what do you run to? Do you call upon the name of the Lord and be saved? Is that your go-to? Does your heart sing no other name? That when you feel just completely overwhelmed, is Jesus the first thing that comes to your heart? Do you just begin to sing a quiet melody in your heart to refocus, to reconnect? Guys, let's be honest. A lot of times we run to a lot of things first before we run to God. When we're tired and overwhelmed, when we're just tired, man, I just need some time to myself. I just need to watch some TV. I just need to relax. And we can zone out for hours. Running into your arms, the riches of your love is sometimes enough. It's sometimes when I think about it. Well, in fact, I really don't think about it all that often. The riches of your love will always be enough. Is it? When you're tired and overwhelmed, when life is chaotic, do you go into your quiet place and just say, God, I need you right now. I just need to get recentered, refocused. Because life's just pulling. You don't have to spend hours. Just 30 seconds. God, I need you right now. That's being God-centered. That's moving the bubble back into the middle. When you're in those situations, in the moment, in situations where you don't know what to do, that nanosecond prayer, God help. Jesus, show me what to do. Help me. I need you. God, I'm confused. God, this doesn't make sense. God, I don't know what to do. Help me. God, if you don't help me, I'm going to kill this kid. God, if you don't help me, I'm going to give my spouse the frying pan. Look, guys, this is practical life that we all get out of sorts at times. We all get frustrated. Our emotions can take over at times. And we do things and say things when the bubble is outside of the ring. And to be God-centered is about getting it back centered. And it can take just a moment. Take a deep breath. God, I need you. God, help me. God, show me. That's getting God-centered. It's getting focused. It's getting refocused and reconnected to what is your source. What do you run to? There's a lot of people, not necessarily in church, but sometimes in church, that run to alcohol, that run to drugs as escape. That God isn't their first choice. And so being God-centered is about putting God back in that priority. David running for his life. Saul was out to kill him. Saul was the king. David was anointed the next king. And he's out. Saul is out to kill him. And so David flees and he runs. Look, life is chasing him down. The whole army is out to kill him. Look, I imagine that David's emotions were a little carried away, that fear was beginning to grip him. It's him against the whole army. And in Psalm 16, David says this, "Preserve me, O God, for in you I put my trust." That word preserve means to guard, to watch over, to take care of. What is David doing? In the midst of craziness, he's centering himself back in God. God, you watch over me. You protect me. God, in you I put my trust. God, you are the only one. Where else can I go? God, life may be shooting arrows at me, but God, you are the one that watches over me. You are the one. David is recentering himself back in God. And he says, "Oh, my soul." What is he doing? He's talking to himself. He's saying, self, shake out of this. Soul is mind, will, and emotions. Emotions, you're not going to be controlled by this situation. You have said to the Lord, soul, you have said to the Lord, I'm going to say to the Lord, you are my Lord. When life is crazy, when life seems to not make sense, when you don't know what's going on, just stop and go, God, I know who's in charge. I know who's in control. And it's certainly not me. So, Lord, I trust you. Lord, I look to you as my Lord. It's refocusing, recentering. And he says, my goodness is nothing apart from you. In other words, it's not based on anything good I do. It's not based on who I am. It's not based on how good I am or how bad I've been. God, it's purely because you are my Lord and you have chosen to love me, and so I can come to you and I declare that you are Lord over my life and I trust you. I trust you. To be God-centered means we need to remind ourselves who we are in God and who God is in us. Henry David Thoreau is often credited with this statement. The mass of men lead lives of quiet desperation. The mass of men or the mass of people lead lives of quiet desperation. In other words, people are not enjoying life. They're just desperately hanging on. They've settled into whatever life brings them and have no hope for a different tomorrow. They're just going through the motions of life. And the hope of a better tomorrow or a different tomorrow has drained from them. And so they are just desperately hanging on, going from day to day to day to day, not expecting any change. And life becomes mundane, it becomes routine, and it becomes boring. And yet, people go to bed, wake up, go to work, come home, go to bed, wake up, go to work, come home. And every day becomes familiar, and life begins to be drained from them. Living has a way of draining life out of us until we are just going through the motions of living. We live in the information age when we are bombarded with news that is mostly negative and destructive. If you watch the news, if you surf the net, anywhere that there's news, it's always Trump did this or Trump did that, or it's always negative. It's this was bombed, this was torn down, this happened, this murder, this killing, this situation, the weather in the Mideast is lives have been lost. And we're just constantly bombarded with information. You go on social networks, and it's who's doing this to who, and what happened, and this is, and it's like, it's just gossip. And we're bombarded with all of this negative stuff. And pretty soon, it's like, what's the point of it all? What's the point? In other words, we begin to lose hope for a better tomorrow. God had more than just living lives of quiet desperation or being overwhelmed by information overload. God has so much more. Jesus, in John 10:10, it says that Jesus has come that we might have life and that we might have life more abundantly. Yes. How many here are living the abundant life? That you can't wait to wake up every morning. What's wrong? Why not? Jesus promised that what he came to bring was abundant life. Life to the full. Life to the excitement. Okay, just turn to somebody and tell them how excited you are to be alive right now. Okay. That was pretty pathetic. Okay? Okay, turn to somebody and convince them that you're excited to be alive right now. Okay, I just got to tell you, I was here at the office last night when there was, 12, 16 ladies here playing bunco. Okay, there was like 1,000 times more energy watching them play bunco than there is here right now. Okay, what's wrong with that picture? Okay, do I need to bring some dice in here and give you some dice and let you yell bunco every once in a while? There you go. Guys, if we're not careful, we're past the point of being careful. Okay? We're allowing life to dictate to us our demeanor, our outlook, when God should be dictating our demeanor and our outlook in life. Look, what does it mean to live an abundant life? What does that mean in every day get up? It means that you're excited for today. You're excited to be here. Look, you woke up on the right side of the dirt. Woo. That's something to celebrate. Although, I mean, if you really think about it, heaven's probably not such a bad deal. But since you're here, let's enjoy it. Let's enjoy life. We have the God of creation on our side. We have the God of creation living inside of us. I know I say this way too often, but it's so true. We got to notify our faces. Let's be happy. Well, Pastor, if you had my life, you would be so happy. Okay, the writer of Hebrews says this. He's writing to the church, the Hebrews, and he says, for example, there was God's promise to Abraham. Since there was no one greater to swear by, God took an oath in his own name. He swore by himself, on himself, saying, I will certainly bless you, and I will multiply your descendants beyond number. Then Abraham waited patiently, and he received what God had promised. Now, when people take an oath, they call on someone greater than themselves to hold them to it. I swear by the church. I swear on the courts. I swear by the Bible. They're calling on something greater than themselves, saying, I promise to do this. And without any question, that oath is binding. God also bound himself with an oath so that those who received the promise could be perfectly sure that he would never change his mind. So God has given both his promise and his oath. These two things are unchangeable because it is impossible for God to lie. Therefore, we who have fled to him for refuge can have great confidence as we hold to the hope that lies before us. Hold to the hope that lies before us. This hope is a strong and trustworthy anchor for our souls. It leads us through the curtain into God's inner sanctuary. Jesus has already gone in there for us. He has become our eternal high priest in the order of Melchizedek. Melchizedek was an Old Testament priest. Okay? What is Paul, we most believe it's Paul that wrote the letter, but what is the writer to Hebrews saying? He's saying, look, to be God-centered, when life is throwing you all kinds of circumstances, we need to trust in the one who has made a promise and cannot lie. And for example, take Abraham. Abraham, God made a promise to him that said, I'm going to bless you and that your descendants will be as numerable as the stars in the sky. There was just one problem. Sarah was barren. And God made a promise that they were going to have a kid. And they had to wait 25 years. They had to wait 25 years. God has given us promises in the Bible. God has told us how we can live and how we should live and what He will do and how He will back us up. And yet, sometimes life has a way of we just keep living, nothing changes, and we begin to doubt. We begin to lose hope. We begin to wonder, God, where are you? God, what's going on? How come nothing's changing? How come my life is like this? And we begin to lose hope. We begin to accept that this is the way life is always going to be. That this is just my life. What they're saying here is, just as Abraham had to be patient, but he was being patient with the one who made a promise and then swore an oath on himself. Now, there's no one greater than God. And this promise says that God can't lie. So if God said it in His Word, we can count on it. And He's saying, all you that have taken refuge in God, all of you that have put your hope in God, you can count on it, and it becomes an anchor for the soul. That you can have hope for tomorrow. In other words, when the seas of adversity are blowing and the waves are rocking your ship and your life seems out of control, there is an anchor. Being God-centered is about coming back to that place, that anchor in our soul that says, God, you cannot lie. You have promised to never leave me nor forsake me. You have promised to deliver me out of this situation. God, I'm going to trust you, even if it takes 25 years. I certainly hope it doesn't. But guys, how many of us have given up? How many of us have lost hope that it's never going to change? That it's always going to be this way? And God is saying, God is reminding us, to be God-centered is to get back to that place of remembering who God is and what He has promised. I love the competition in preaching. But they always win. It's about getting our hope back. Being hopeful for tomorrow. Because not in our circumstances, not in our ability, but in who God is. Is taking on who He says He is and what He has promised to do. We can have confidence and be anchored. That word anchor, it says it is sure and steadfast, or it is firm and secure. that anchor of our soul, that when life is throwing at us, we can go back to that place and get God-centered and know that He has us, that He's with us. There are all kinds of biblical stories in the Bible of God's deliverance and rescue. I want to close with this one last story. It's found in I think I use the Gospel of Mark. The Gospel of Mark. It says, as evening came, Jesus said to His disciples, let's cross to the other side of the lake. So they took Jesus in the boat and started out, leaving the crowds behind, although other boats followed. But soon a fierce storm came up. High waves were breaking into the boat, and it began to fill with water. Jesus was sleeping at the back of the boat with his head on a cushion. Jesus was tired. The disciples woke him up, shouting, "Teacher, don't you care that we're going to drown?" They're panicked. When Jesus woke up, He rebuked the wind and said to the water, "Silence, be still." Suddenly the wind stopped and there was a great calm. Then He asked him, "Why are you afraid? Do you still have no faith?" The disciples were absolutely terrified. Listen to their response. Who is this man? They asked each other. Even the wind and the waves obey Him. The problem that a lot of us have is we don't understand who's in the boat with us. If they would have realized who Jesus was, they're freaking out in the storm. Jesus is asleep. Now, you got to be at peace to be able to go to sleep in the midst of a rocking boat filling with water. And yet the disciples had no idea who was in the boat with them. And they went to Him terrified and in a panic. Don't you care that we're about to drown? Have you ever been in that situation? Maybe not literally, but life situations seem overwhelming, and you feel like you're about to drown, and you wonder where God is. Being God-centered is about realizing He's in the boat with you, that He's with you, that He knows what you're going through, and He knows what your tomorrow has. Jeremiah tells us, "For I've given you a future and a hope." That God knows your future. And it doesn't matter what your circumstances are now. It doesn't matter what you're going through. It doesn't matter how hard life is right now. Being God-centered is about putting Him back in your boat and realizing that He is there in every situation, in every circumstance. And that sometimes, yes, we may need to be patient like Abraham. But don't let life rob you of the hope of a different tomorrow. Let's stand. Look, wherever you are this morning, whatever you're going through, whatever your mental mindset is, whether you're overwhelmed, you're discouraged, you're living a life of quiet desperation, that you have no idea what tomorrow is going to bring, get God-centered. Get the bubble back in the middle. Say, God, I trust you. I know who you are. And I know that you walk with me. Let's pray. Father, sometimes it's easy to forget when we're overwhelmed by life circumstances. God, the picture of you sleeping in the boat isn't one of carelessness or casualness. It's one of perfect peace.